Well, hi everybody. Welcome to today's presentation on style management tips to keep your Revit models clean and healthy using Ideate StyleManager. My name is Sash Kaziminidzad, and I'll be here for the next 30 minutes showing you a little bit about Ideate StyleManager. So just a little bit about me for those of you that don't know me. I'm located in Portland, Oregon. I'm a licensed architect with licensure based out of the state of California. Over 15 years experience in this field and been with Ideate now for 8 years, mostly focused on the Revit platform. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm always here to help out. And if you want to link in and a little bit on social media, you can find me on LinkedIn, and there's kind of my information below my picture. So a couple of items before we get started with this presentation. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a brief survey. And if you can just take a moment and fill that out, that'll really help us out. The reason why we ask for that is because if you do have any further questions, we want to make sure we can get back to you and answer those questions. But also, if you do have any feedback for us on this webinar, that'd be great to know as well. And also, if you have any requests for future webinars, we definitely want to hear from you. So all of us go through these webinar questionnaires, we take a look at them, and then we look at how we want to propose our future webinars. Also, for those that are not familiar with our products or maybe have some of our products but not all of them, I've attached a couple of handouts. One of them is just kind of a marketing brochure of all of our products, a brief synopsis of each product. Also, some links to various places on our website, so it's kind of a cheat sheet document. So feel free to download those when you get a chance. Also, during this webinar, please ask lots of questions. So you heard Richard Taylor's on the line, and Richard's going to be fielding the questions while I do this presentation. Richard, if you want to unmute yourself and say hello, you can do so.
Hello, everyone. And Sash is coming to you from Portland, Oregon. I'm coming to you from almost the other Portland on the other side of the country, Boston, Massachusetts. So thanks, everyone, for showing up today and spending some time with us.
Thanks, Richard. And we do get a lot of questions on, will this webinar be recorded? Absolutely. And it will be available to view within a couple of days. All right, so why are we here today? Well, we're always here to help you simplify your Revit data challenges. So our collection of Revit tools really enable all disciplines in our industry to say goodbye to the laborious data editing, viewing, and management tasks. And Ideate StyleManager is one of the products in the collections that can help you with your data editing and management tasks. And we're going to show you a couple of tips today and things to be aware of. All right, and then before we get into the presentation, just a couple of reminders here. If you need any help on any of our products or just have some general questions, be sure to check out ideatesoftware.com. We have a lot of great information on our website. We have a lot of blog posts, a lot of help file information, a lot of recorded videos. So, pre-recorded videos and post-recorded videos, from our webinars, such as this one. So really a plethora of information is available on our website. If you are struggling with any of the products or need any help, we're always here to assist. Be sure to reach out to us at support@ideatesoftware.com. We're always happy to help out. Whether you have questions or feature requests, we definitely want to hear from you. And don't forget, check out our Getting Started guide. So if you do want to trial any software or learn how to improve some of your software skills, be sure to check that information out. We do have a substantial amount of content to help you get started. Some questions that do come up is StyleManager available for older products, or are you doing any, updates on StyleManager? The answer is yes. So a couple things to keep in mind is we follow the Autodesk development cycle with our products when it comes to adding features or improving products. So it's the current version of Revit plus the 3 prior versions as well. So just something to kind of keep in mind. So when the 2018 software kind of drops off, we won't be doing any improvements to, the StyleManager, Bim Link, or any other products, but be looking for those updates and improvements for 2019 through 2022 when available. All right, so why are we here today? Well, we're here to chat about styles. So let's go ahead and chat about them. So a couple things to kind of keep in mind here when it comes to styles issues. And when I'm talking about styles, I'm talking about things like object styles, subcategories, line patterns, fill patterns, text nodes and fonts and dimensions and arrowheads. These are the kinds of things that we're talking about regarding styles. So what can lead to styles issues? Well, a couple of things here. For one, creating additional styles. Having been using Revit for many years, having done a lot of support on the Revit platform, we tend to see a lot of people creating additional styles. And it may be because your model becomes very bloated, you're not sure what to look for anymore, so you just kind of go in and start creating more styles just to kind of get it over with and move on. That's definitely a big issue we run into. Loading families and loading groups into your models, that's going to bring in a lot of additional style information. One of the things that Revit doesn't do well is it doesn't tell you what it's doing. And I think we can all kind of agree, with that. And so this say, hey, I'm going to be loading up all this information. And sometimes it does, when you do like maybe a transfer project standards, you do get maybe a little bit of information, or if you use the insert views feature, you get a little bit of info, but it doesn't give you a full picture of the things that it's bringing in. Binding Revit files is another big one, right? So if you have a Revit file, you've linked it in, you're like, you know what, I want to, bake this thing into my my project. That's going to bring in a lot of additional styles with it as well. Cad files. I think we all know that Cad files are kind of evil, especially when you import them and explode them. Then you've just really made a mess of everything. But one of the things to keep in mind too is when you link Cad files into your Revit models, they actually bring in residual data that even if you remove the link, you do get left with some CAD information in your projects. Good news is StyleManager can help you identify and clean that stuff up. Transfer project standards, as I mentioned before, brings in all sorts of things. Insert views from schedules the same way. So, keep that in mind anytime you're using those features. I'm also going to say careless software programming. Having done this for many years and having worked very closely with our software team, you can really see where if you don't close the loops on some of Revit's back doors, shall we say, you can make a mess of your projects really quickly. There are a lot of gaping holes in the product, and it's easy to get around some of that information and create things that you normally can't create just by working directly in Revit. So just be very well aware whether you're using any sort of visual scripting program or whatever program you're writing. You need to be very careful that you close those loops because you can end up with additional styles. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having a BIM execution plan. And in that BIM execution plan, you really want to make sure that you have provisions in there for cleaning up your models. And you want to do it often, because if you wait too long, you will end up with a filthy model. And it gets harder and harder to clean these things up as the project progresses. And with that said, I will say that style issues are typically a progressive problem. Usually doesn't happen on day one unless you're doing a whole bunch of transfer project standards and inserting views and trying to build up a project. It usually does progress over time. Why is it important to address these styles? Well, we want to streamline our model and family content, right? Edit to the essentials. That's one thing that I always remind people of. We want to keep our file sizes to a minimum, right? Not because it's taking a lot of server space, but because it takes up a lot of space in projects. We want to make things easier to navigate, and we want to make informed decisions and not guesses. And we want to improve our file performance, right? File bloat. You have big files, you have a lot of big families, a lot of information. As you load those things up into your projects, it's just going to make your files a lot bigger and bloated. So we want to be able to reduce that. And there's nothing more annoying than having a slow open, a slow save, or even a slow reload latest. So really keeping these models clean, removing these styles, using Ideate Explorer to do your other audits, that will really help you streamline your entire process. The goal here, of course, is to keep our project and company standards in alignment. The more and more that we add additional styles or load things up from weird places, we're going to get out of alignment, and it gets really hard to navigate projects, and especially when you're on deadlines and you're just saying, what, the heck with it, I'm just going to use this style or this one. I just got to get these out the door. It really makes it really difficult to navigate for other people. So we want to make it easy for people to make informed decisions. The ultimate goal here is to keep our project team, and in this case, the stakeholders, happy, because nobody's happy if your project isn't working well, if your models take forever to open and save. I think everybody starts getting a little bit grumpy in this situation. So keep in mind, it's really important to address your styles. All right, what are my top 10 styles to address? Well, let's take a look at some of these. Here's kind of the categories that I picked, and these are pretty much all the categories that we address in StyleManager. But we have more than 10 categories that we kind of handle here. So why look at some of these things? Well, with object styles, this is a big one, right? and when we talk about object styles, you can't create your own object styles, but you can create your own subcategories. And these come in through loaded, families, right? So if you download manufacturer content, or you create your own homemade content, or you just kind of randomly find those contents wherever you can find them, keep in mind that, there's a lot of subcategory information in there. And the reason why we create the subcategory information is, for visibility control or to control the line weights of certain elements within a family. But as you load that stuff up, it just makes your object style list a lot larger. And so we get a lot of that inconsistency. So cleaning this stuff up really helps out. With line styles, line patterns, filled regions, fill patterns, a lot of times what we find is that there's a lot of duplicate information in there, but the names are a little bit different. So people like, I don't know what this means, so I'll just create my own. That's bad, right? So again, we want to take the time to name things properly and make sure that everybody has an understanding of the intended use. Exploded Cad files, definitely a big issue because it will bring in line styles. It'll bring in additional fill patterns. So keep in mind that we want to go through and clean up our models from time to time. I find with materials and assets, a lot of these bits and pieces of information are just unused. People loading up a whole bunch of materials, but they're just not in use. And then you can end up with rendering issues, or if you're gathering data from the material, the information inside of there, you can have issues with that. So, keep that in mind. And purging a lot of times doesn't actually purge materials or assets. A lot of that has to be done manually. Good news, StyleManager can help you with that. I see the same thing with filters and view templates. People creating tons of these things, but they're the same. And they may be very similar to other ones as well. So can we streamline that and merge these together and kind of clean up our projects and make this process go a lot faster? Absolutely. So StyleManager can kind of help you identify, that information. Viewports are one that I have a huge gripe with. One of the reasons why is I always find that like transfer project standards, especially if we're bringing in schedules or bits of information from other projects, they'll bring in viewport types with it. Even though a schedule doesn't have a view title with it, it will bring in viewport information. And if you try to purge it and you can't, and then you find the element ID number and try to force delete it, that's very bad. And you can actually do some big harm to your Revit models. And I've actually done some terrible things to Revit projects before by force deleting things that are not intended to be force delete. So we want to be very careful with this, the way we kind of handle this information. So again, I think you're going to find a lot of things in general with this list. You'll find similarities with other styles or ones that are not in use. And that's where StyleManager can help us address this. So the solution for this, of course, is StyleManager. This is where we can get consistent template, family, and project standards. Allows you to analyze your styles for usage. We tell you where they're being used and if they're being used. And if they're not being used, you can delete those unused styles. And if you have a style that shouldn't be used and it needs to be merged with another one, well, that's where you can do what I call the merge and purge. And this allows you to take these styles and merge them into other styles, which will then kick out the unwanted ones and will streamline your projects and will make things look a lot cleaner. So StyleManager, I love it. It's just a fantastic product to really help us out. And this has been a needed solution, I think, in our industry for quite a long time. And of course, here it is. So without further ado, I know we want to just get right into this demonstration. So I'm going to switch over here to Revit. And for today's demonstration, I'm going to be using just an MEP model here. And I want to emphasize, we try to kind of cover all disciplines whenever we can in our demonstrations. The nice thing about our products is that we cover all disciplines. We're not, discipline specific. We really cover everybody in the AECO industry. And so, for today, we wanted to kind of focus on the mechanical stuff, but what I'm going to demo here works for all projects of all typologies across the industry. When you launch StyleManager, which I already have it open here, when you launch StyleManager, we typically take you to the home page to start with. And, if you're getting started with it, don't forget to check out the Getting Started guide and our online help. So there's a lot of information there, and it's always kept up to date. So if you're new to it, definitely take a look at it. It'll help you get started. Here are the categories, of course, that StyleManager covers, object styles all the way to arrowheads. And just real quickly, just a couple things I want to point out to you, just, from an interface standpoint. I won't be doing an object style demonstration, but For object styles, what we typically do is we break it up, by category and then by the subcategory itself. So you can't, merge categories. You can't do that. But of course, you can take these and analyze a subcategory usage and, decide which ones need to be kicked out of the project or merged with other ones. Okay, so something to kind of keep in mind. And we have some filters here because, even though this is kind of a small project here, for these larger projects that everybody here is working on, this list can get quite long. So we have some nice filter tools to help you kind of review this list and kind of edit down to the essentials. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of things here real quickly. I'm going to start with filters. And I know on the MEP side of things, I know filters can be kind of a big deal. And the reason why is, a lot of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing folks want to highlight their systems or add color or visual effects, shall we say, to their systems, right? Whether it's, domestic hot water, cold water, it's a hydronic system, whatever it may be. But a lot of times what happens, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, is that this list can start getting out of control real quickly. Whether you're doing a transfer of project standards or inserting a view from file or, just trying to copy a bunch of information for other projects into your current project to kind of get a boost, this gets out of control real quickly. So how can we help? Well, a couple things to keep in mind over here. The question marks on the left-hand side means you haven't done an analysis yet to determine where these filters or these elements or whatever you're analyzing are used or if they're in use. Okay, once you do the analysis, we'll report how many use cases there are. Okay, the color that you see over here, just as a reminder, represents duplicates. And what's kind of cool with some of our categories like line styles and line patterns and filters is that even without the analysis, we can do some basic sleuthing and report whether there are duplicates. And right here, by default, we don't isolate the duplicates, but when you go over here, these are the duplicates. So these two right here, even though the names are different, they're actually duplicates. And basically, we're picking out, what categories this information belongs to. And remember, with filters, as an example, you're not applying override rules to filters themselves. You bring up a filter in a view, and then you say, hey, I'm bringing this filter up, and here are the overrides that I'm applying, based on these filter rules. So we're just saying, look, these are the categories of some of the basic rules for this filter. We found some duplicates here. So immediately we can say, all right, we got some problems here. All right, so to do the analysis here, you can simply double click. And we'll kind of run the analysis, and you can see over here that we have 23 use cases of this particular one, and they belong to these views. So I can come over here and start double clicking. You can also kind of bulk select. So I can come over here and select this one, hold the shift button, and hit analyze, and I can do multiples at once. All right. So just something to kind of keep in mind. And depending on which ones are in use and where they're being used, it could take a few moments to do the analysis. I want to point out that we are literally looking left and right, top to bottom, front to back, whatever you want to say, for style usage. We're looking everywhere for where styles are used, including places that you and I would have never thought of. Things like in view templates, and even like the line work tool can get captured in a view template, which is kind of wild. When you think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute, I just used line work, which is kind of a per view override. You're saying line work can get captured in a view template and be held onto by Revit? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So we're really looking everywhere. So, for those of you like, hey, it's taken a little while, absolutely, because we have to look at the entire Revit model and try to find out where all of these styles are being used. So this one should be done here in just a moment, but then we can kind of take a look at this and decide how we want to proceed. So we're almost done here. You can see this one's taking just a little bit of extra time because there's probably a lot of use cases over here. So, here we go. We got a report of where these filters are being used. And I encourage you to take a look up here and say, okay, let's just get rid of the ones that are not used, right? So, and again, you have to make the decision whether or not you want to keep these. We're not saying because they have zero use, you should get rid of them. No, that's not the case. You need to decide, do you want to keep them or not? All right. Now, for this demo, I like to delete things and clean up my projects. I'm not saying that you should just do that. Okay. But when I see things like this, I'm like, I don't want this. Let's get it out of here. And, the filter's been removed. You can see here these duplicates right here because they're both in this green color. Neither of them are in use. So for this demo, I'm going to remove all of these things, and I'm removing them safely, right? That's the idea behind it. And then what I can do is I can come back and say, okay, show me what's in use. And all of these are in use. So as I mentioned before, you can kind of take a look and understand, where these things are being used. This one's being held onto by a view template. So it's not necessarily by a view, it's being used by a view template. And you can see this one over here is being used by a view template, but also by views as well. So this will help you kind of make an informed decision on how you want to proceed. Do you want to keep it? Or in this case, where these two are duplicates, this one's called new phases. Well, you can't add phase information to these rules, right? So, or, to these filters. So in this case, this kind of is irrelevant to me. So I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to merge this into the domestic. And what that's going to do is it's going to take these filters right here, these views that are using these filters right here, and it's going to merge them and use this one over here. And one of the things I want to point out to you when you're merging things like filters, all we're doing for those 5 views that you saw is we're reassigning the filter. We're not changing any of the overrides or settings applied to that filter on each one of those views. So if your views had overrides based on those filters, we're not changing those overrides. Okay, that's all. We're not changing those. We're just simply saying, hey, we're swapping out the filter because we did the merge and purge. All right, so that's kind of what we want to keep in mind with over here. So that's a little bit on the filter side. I'm going to go to fonts here real quickly because fonts are a really interesting one. One of the things to keep in mind about fonts is fonts are used in a lot of places like annotation families, model-based families, and schedules where you're not assigning a text style. And remember, text styles are a hybrid of a lot of things. They have font assignments, they have color assignments, they have opaque and transparent background assignments. That's how text works. But fonts can be applied to these other categories and other places in the models without the use of a text style. So that's why we have text and fonts as kind of 2 categories. And we can say kind of the same for dimensions and arrowheads. Dimensions use arrowheads, right? So a couple things to keep in mind is, this graphic over here looks a little different. Basically, what the 1 means over here is we've done the general analysis of where things are, in use. But the question marks are the additional analysis for annotation, model, and schedule families. Meaning if you want to do a deeper dive, you can do a deeper dive in the model and also do an analysis in these categories. Keep in mind, though, when you do the analysis of annotation, model, and schedules, it will take longer to do the analysis. So something to kind of keep in mind. But we can see over here that these font styles are being used in these elements over here. And the reality is my company standard is Arial across the board. So I can take all of these right here, and I'm just going to grab this Arial as well, and I'm going to merge this, and it tells you right here, since we didn't analyze model families, we're not making any changes to model families until you actually do the analysis, but we're going to take all these other styles and merge them into Arial. And what that means is we're going to open up any, annotation families or any other families that need to be open, and we're going to do the swap out of that font for the Arial font. So one of the demos I like to talk about is, hey, if you started off a project with your own standards, but your client has their own standards, whether you're working with a port authority of sorts or on a GSA project and they have their own, what a great way to just take your stuff and kind of merge it into their content without you having to open up each and every one of their families to do a swap out of a font. Why not just do it right here? And just like that, you can then, do that merge and save yourself a ton of time. So remember, you want to apply this to, your projects and your templates, but also to your families as well. So just something to kind of keep in mind over here. All right, so I'm going to do one more brief demo over here because I want to remind people of how important it is to use StyleManager in your families, and then we'll take some questions from everybody. So I'm just going to go to the entire project, and I'm just going to stick with this mechanical theme, and I'm going to pick a boiler here just as an example. I'm just easily selecting this boiler here just so I can go to the edit family. I could have certainly done it through the project browser, but I like to use Explorer for this. So here's an example of a family that has styles in it, right? It has a couple of built-in stuff that you can't delete because those are hard-coded. but it has line patterns in it and fill patterns and so forth, right? And look at this material list here as an example. Well, one of the things that I like to do when I build a family is I like to clean the heck out of it, all right, before I load it into a project. Remember, always vet your families before you do anything. So here I am, I'm in the Purge Unused dialog box. I'm checking everything. I'm hitting OK. And I usually come in and do it a few times because when you purge some stuff, then other stuff becomes available to purge. And you're like, awesome. I deleted everything that could be, or I should say not deleted, but I purged everything that can be purged in the project. And the answer is that really true? Well, take a look at my material list right here. You can clearly see that it didn't purge out any of the materials. So as I mentioned before, purge doesn't always purge, right? And so StyleManager can help us do the analysis here and actually do the cleanup. If you ever try to delete materials, you have to do it one by one. Well, the nice thing is StyleManager can make that really efficient. So again, this is part of my vetting and cleaning up process before I save it and load it into any projects. And like I did before, I could say, show me what's not in use. All of these are not being used. I don't want them because they're going to show up in my project. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove these things. And you can see over here, it's going to take just a moment. We're going through and we're showing you everything that's being removed. And it's cool because we show you the patterns and what they look like and so forth. And so now, here's the one that's being in use. And so again, I can come in here and clean up things that are not in use and really streamline this project before, or this family before I load it up. And now when I come to my material dialog box, you can see just that one material is in use. So don't forget to use StyleManager in your families. They will really help clean things up. Okay, so that's the quick, demonstration. Richard, do we have any questions that we can answer aloud here? I know we have a few minutes left and I see a bunch of questions coming through, but let's pick a couple maybe we can talk about.
Yeah, I thought this was a really good question from Brian. And that was when you merge items, no matter what they are, whether they're text or line styles, can you rename at the same time? And so I explained that it's actually a two-step process. And I don't know if you actually did the renaming, but you can actually just pick any of the style that you want. So I would merge, like what Sash did, he merged everything into Arial font or whatever the materials. Then he could just right click and do a rename if he wanted to.
Yep. Yeah, so this takes you to the edit right over here. So any one of these will kind of shortcut it, but you can always right click and hit the rename, to handle that process. So the edit here isn't a rename. It's an edit, and then you can do the rename by right-clicking on any one of these. So absolutely, It's a great question.
And then another question I thought was interesting was, that in filled regions and filled patterns, they're created by a .pat file, which is the old sort of AutoCAD technology. Mm-hmm. And so a question was asked, like whether we're managing that PAT file if it's, duplicates. And so the answer is no, we're managing the fill patterns and the filled regions, but not the .pat file that created the fill pattern. But I think that's a very good question and something we may want to think about as a particular. It's not really a style, I guess. It's more of the building block of actually creating the fill pattern in one way.
Yeah, and you know what, that brings up a good point. I know we're here at the bottom of the hour, but one of the things I want to mention too, and thanks for mentioning this, Richard, is that when we do this cleanup right here, we're doing the cleanup in the project file. We're not saving anything out to kind of where your standard locations are. So, if there is a family, let's just say that needs, some sort of addressing or something that needs, some cleanup here. One of the things to kind of keep in mind is, and of course I got to find, a family here that's in use. But one of the things to kind of keep in mind here is that if you want to edit the family, you can certainly do so. And again, I can find, this is always the fun part, right? We got to, find one of these that's in use. But you can select the family, that ends up over here, and there's an edit button over here, which will take you to the edit family. You could do some cleanup in there and then save it out. But whenever we do a merge, especially with a family, like on the object style side of things, we're opening up that family in the project in the background, doing it, doing the swap out and then kind of loading it back into the project, but it does not get saved out to the source location. So I was kind of looking at a comment from, Bob Bell over here. He's like, hey, he's run StyleManager on, family templates. They're a lot cleaner. New families created are a lot cleaner. It kind of goes in line with if you kind of clean up those families and save them back on your server, they're clean and ready to go. So next time you load them up into your projects, you're not having to come back and keep, using StyleManager to keep cleaning up that information that always finds its way into the project. So that's why I wanted to emphasize, definitely use StyleManager in your families. And thanks, Bob. That's a good tip, in your family templates as well.
And another quick question I thought was very good, and it won't take too much time, is up at the top, there's a search box you see under object styles, and someone was asking, well, what is that? So let's just, as an example, if he types in site or lighting, yeah, perfect. It searches the particular style that you're looking at. So if you're, in this case, if you're under object styles and he's looking just for lighting, it's just giving the information or the object styles that have the word lighting within it.
Yep, and what we're just trying to do is really just help you, otherwise this becomes, again, this is a small project. I can only imagine the large projects you guys are working on where you can have tons of these things. We're really trying to help you, edit to the essentials and view to the essentials. So, great question. All right. Any other questions, Richard? I know we're at the bottom, and we can hang out for a few more minutes. For those of you who have to leave, just a quick reminder, and we'll hang out here for a couple of minutes. Don't forget to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. We definitely want to hear from you. If you haven't downloaded the handouts, please do so. And remember, this webinar will be distributed here in a couple of days, so be on the lookout for the email. But we'll hang out here and answer a couple more questions. But for those of you who have to leave, thank you for your time today, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks very much. I thought there was a really good question on imports, and that was just the fact of, could you change some of the styles with the imports? And the imports are a little bit different just because if you have a partially exploded AutoCAD file, what you can do is you can merge to the top level or parent level, which in this case would be the actual DWG file itself.
Which is this right here.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of a question about, can you merge to other things? And I think the question was specifically with materials, materials that are from imports.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to do that, because I think once those materials come in, they're part of the Revit environment at that point, as opposed to part of that import. So I think you should be able to merge those together. But going back to what you were saying here, Richard, all these, because they're still technically considered imports, they're not a full exploder. They're just basically, lines and text and fill patterns that are now part of Revit. You can merge, these styles within each other or to the parent, but you can't merge this style into an object style, like of a different category. It doesn't work that way. So we can kind of do a little bit of cleanup, here. It's almost like an AutoCAD where you're taking layers and swapping them out for other layers. We can kind of get to that level, but we can't swap these out for other object styles, if that makes sense. And that's just a Revit limitation. All right.
And for those of you that are still on, there's been a couple questions about when we're going to be releasing for 2022. And so we don't have an exact date. There's a number of factors that are kind of in flux right now. So we are saying Q2 of 2021 is what we're planning right now.
All right. Well, it looks like we're a few minutes over here. And again, if you have any more questions, feel free to type them in. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Again, we download all this information and review it. But be sure to check us out online at ideatesoftware.com. Follow us on social media. And again, we're always here if you have any questions. Richard, thank you so much for your help today and answering the question. I know we had several of them come through the questions panel. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. And we'll see you online next time. Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.